This is your reality check.
Hi everyone, and welcome to The Reality Check, the Canadian show that explores a wide range of controversies and curiosities using science and critical thinking. I am your host, Darren McKee, and with me, as usual, is Adam Gardner.
What's up, cuboids?
We have a great show for you today. Adam is going to talk to you about mentalism.
That's right.
But first, I'm going to cover whether AI make brain dumb.
Really?
Maybe. A study out of MIT says using AI rots your brain? Well, that's what headlines about the study say. What did the actual study find? What else are people saying about it? That's my topic for today.
Great.
First, the context and some basic info. There was a paper submitted on June 10th, 2025 to Archive with the title, Your Brain on ChatGPT, Accumulation of Cognitive Debt When Using an AI Assistant for Essay Writing Task. And this is by Cosmina et al. It's a light 200 pages.
Oh, boy.
Disclosure, I did not read the whole thing.
Okay.
I skimmed. Here's a truncated abstract. They truncated their own abstract, and I slightly truncated it more.
The abstract was too long to read.
I had to take a break, bro.
Yeah.
This study explores the neural and behavioral consequences of LLM, large language model, assisted essay writing. Participants were divided into 3 groups. That's 3. LLM, search engine, and brain only. No tools. All right.
Interesting.
Each completed 3 sessions under the same condition. All right. So 3 groups, 3 sessions. In a 4th session, LLM users were assigned to brain only group. So they went from using only the large language models to then only using their brain.
Sure.
And brain only users were reassigned to the LLM condition. And they went from only using their brain for 3 times to then once using large language models.
Okay.
A total of 54 participants took part in the first 3 sessions, with 18 completing session 4. Abstract continues. We used electroencephalography, EEG, to assess cognitive load during essay writing and analyzed essays using NLP, natural language processing, as well as scoring essays with the help of human teachers and an AI judge. So they say the EEG revealed significant differences in brain connectivity.
Oh.
Brain-only participants exhibited the strongest, most distributed networks. Search engine users showed moderate engagement, and LLM users displayed the weakest connectivity. Cognitive activity scaled down in relation to external tool use.
Sure.
In session 4, LLM to brain participants showed reduced alpha and beta connectivity, indicating underengagement. This is where, I don't know my EEG stuff as well, so I'll just say, okay, I'm sure there's some truth to that. Brain to LLM users exhibited higher memory recall and activation of occipital, parietal, and prefrontal areas. It's, different parts of your brain bouncing back and forth. The occipital's at the back, related to your eyes, and parietal is further forward, and then prefrontal, of course, is just at the front of your brain. Similar to search engine users. Sorry for that interjection there. So brain to LLM is similar to the search engine thing. Self-reported ownership of the essays that were written was the lowest in the LLM group and the highest in the brain-only group. LLM users also struggled to accurately quote their own work. Who doesn't? While LLMs offer immediate convenience, our findings highlight potential cognitive costs. Over 4 months, LLM users consistently underperformed at neural, linguistic, and behavioral levels. Wow. These results raise concerns about the long-term educational implications of LLM reliance and underscore the need for deeper inquiry into AI's role in learning. Okay, so that's the abstract.
Yeah.
Adam, do you have any thoughts before I start talking more?
Well, I mean, there's questions like, does exercising your brain in a certain way actually exercise it in the way that traditional exercise does, and that helps you think better in the future? I think that the common way of thinking is yes, but in the amount of time in a day that you're going to spend using an LLM versus using your brain power, will that make a big difference? I don't know, right?
Yeah, you're thinking about the broader implication of the study. That's
yeah.
fair. Kind of a use it or lose it, right?
I know people say things like, well, playing video games can actually be quite good because it uses a lot of your brain power, even though, people think that rots your brain. So there are certain, I guess, activities which may engage your brain in a way that the EEG may think it's firing a lot. Is that ultimately really that useful? And I think that depends on a lot of factors.
That's fair. Yep.
And beyond that, yeah, I don't really know. It's hard to tell.
I mean, you also just got to abstract, and sometimes it's hard to hear the thing, right?
Yep.
And I wonder if listeners picked up on any methodological issues, which I'm soon going to get into.
Good.
But just very quickly, yes, the idea that video games rot your brain is just ridiculous.
Sure.
I think I had a bit of this when I was younger. I think we've covered it on the show, right? I even talked about this, that people talk about being addicted to video games. No one talks about being addicted to books. Or playing sports.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what is the task? Like, you're usually trying to achieve a goal using your brain that gets progressively harder as you develop skills.
Yep.
It's very hard to get such a thing in reality so quickly. Like, I got better at this thing. Now the world's harder.
Yeah.
Like, how did you do that within a day, within an hour?
Yeah.
And so the idea, I just think, I don't know, it's an antiquated notion of what games are. And some of them, they're just ridiculous entertainment. But compared to just watching TV passively, anyway, that's a hobby horse for another day.
I think specifically for games, it's more like if you play a game too much, you get into a lazy mode. Every time you get a new game, you challenge your brain to a certain way. If that's what you're going for. But it depends what you're going for.
Right? If someone is trying to get smarter by playing video games, I wouldn't say that's the move to make.
It's fair. That's fair.
Okay. So good old Ethan Mollick on LinkedIn said, it is a study of college students that finds that those who were told to write an essay with LLM help were, unsurprisingly, less engaged with the essay they wrote, and thus were less engaged when they were asked to do similar work months later. It says something important about cheating with AI. If you let it do your work, you won't learn, but it doesn't tell us anything about LLM use making us dumber overall. So that's a nice interpretation overall, but broadly, there are also several methodological and interpretive limitations that warrant scrutiny. And yes, I used AI for this. Defiantly. So I don't even know what it says. I'm just mouthing the words. You mean speaking? That's right. Number 1, sample size and attrition. For those who were noticing it, so the initial cohort had 54 participants, but only 18 completed the 4th session. Yeah. That's a significant drop off. That means also that it was only 9 because there's 2 groups. So the 18, it splits down the middle. Right? Yep. One was LLM to brain, the other one was brain to LLM. So now you're only 9 versus 9. Mm-hmm. You don't know why people dropped out. And this is why it's more difficult, because if you know it's like a random sample, so to speak, there's not necessarily going to be a biased reason. But maybe people who were good or bad in one way or another also collectively kind of dropped out, which then undermines what you can compare, right? Because it really is a crossover analysis, as I say. You're comparing someone to their own previous activity, so to speak. Most of the time, in a study like something like this, you might have sample size between 30 and 100, depending on the effect size, meaning depending how large you think the thing is in the actual world, you might need more or less participants to try to reveal that effect to you when you're doing science. Having just 9, or 18 in this context, is probably not quite enough. Number 2, ecological validity. Almost everyone wants to generalize from the work they do, even though they try to be cautious. Media definitely picks it up as if it's generalizable. But in this case, the experimental task, writing like an SAT-style essay under EEG monitoring, may not reflect authentic writing context. Yeah. So a kind of artificial setup. You literally have electrodes on the outside of your head. That's what EEG is. And maybe that doesn't help you think normally. Maybe you're like, I got these annoying things in my head. Number 3, tool familiarity and interface effects. The study does not sufficiently account for participants' prior experience with LMs or search engines.
Yeah.
Although I believe they probably randomly assigned people, they did not do a detailed analysis of that person's experience with the tools.
But I would think perhaps the opposite effect might happen, where if I have more experience with an LLM, being challenged to, say, write an essay with an LLM will be cognitively very simple.
Yes.
Whereas if it's new to me, I will be exercising some new behaviors and some new functions in my mind, which may challenge me more.
Yes, it might. But you can imagine, again, you don't know if that's happening or if it's not happening.
Sure.
Or if it's happening and the opposite is also happening.
Yeah, and you have no idea what the prior experience of the
right. And so then, because you're trying to have some sort of, again, similar basis when you're comparing things.
Yep.
And even though it is you who have used a lot of LMs versus you who haven't, that creates a different, again, neural connectivity stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
So the cognitive load differences may stem from tool unfamiliarity as from the tools themselves. Moreover, the interface design and prompt engineering strategies used with ChatGPT were not standardized or reported in detail. So people might have been doing things differently with their prompts, which might reflect more the skill of the prompter versus how their brain is really working one way or the other.
Sure.
Now, there is something about how you interpret EEG data. I don't feel too strongly about this in the sense that I don't have enough of a background at the moment to know this, but my previous experience years ago in psychology is that a lot of brain studies are rightfully viewed with a bit of suspicion. Yeah. Anytime you see pretty images of colorful brain images. You're like, yeah, just a second. There may be something a bit off here, or the methods might not be good, or there's just a complication of a confound of one type or another. So I'll just say that some of this stuff is a bit more correlational, and it's not as clean as one might hope. Again, it's difficult work. I'm not saying it's not difficult work, but it doesn't easily lead to nice, tidy conclusions. Ownership and recall metrics. The claim that LLM users felt less ownership over their essays and struggled to recall content is intriguing but under-theorized. Nice line, AI. These outcomes may reflect differences in writing strategy or engagement rather than cognitive impairment per se. The study would benefit from a more nuanced psychological framework to interpret these self-reports. Again, there's all sorts of reasons why someone may or may not care about what they've written or remember what they've written. Again, you're also only dealing with 9 people. So if just a few of them are a bit aberrant in a way that you don't want them to be, it does really hurt your study even more so. Then we also have the overgeneralization. The authors extrapolate their findings to the broader concerns about AI in education. However, the study demographic was 18 to 39 and was really constrained in its task, right? It was a specific essay. So it's more of an open question, not a settled one. Now, that said, they do have the openness. There should be more inquiry. Like good sciencey people, they never said anything was fully resolved. So that's some of the issues that one could pick up from the methodology of the paper, right, and why it's a bit limited. But how was it reported? Well, the thing that went around the internets that I saw, more than one place, again, this is just people say it, but that's what we do here at our show. Here's what 4 months of data revealed. This is from a post. Number 1, 83.3% of ChatGPT users couldn't quote from essays they wrote minutes earlier.
That's 5 out of 6, I think.
Let that sink in. You write something, hit save, and your brain has already forgotten it because ChatGPT did the thinking. Nuanced, beautiful.
There's nothing even close to suggesting anything like this.
And also, as you know, like, given what I just said, this study, 83.3%, no, that point is just a useless figure. You almost might be rounding to the nearest 10%. Number 2, brain scans revealed the damage. Neural connections collapsed from 79 to just 42. That's a 47% reduction in brain connectivity. If your computer lost half its processing power, you'd call it broken. That's what's happening to ChatGPT users' brains.
Oh, this is up there with the using 10% of your brain myth.
So I do like this. Neural connections collapse from 79 to 42, which sounds like, does someone have a stroke?
Yeah, your brain's just depreciating.
Yes.
You just turned off the turbo button on my brain.
Seriously, 47% decline in connectivity. It does seem like you should go to the hospital.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, there is some numerical support to some interpretation of this, but the way this is now phrased, it makes no sense. It tries to interpret this if something's very dramatic when that's not really what happened, and that interpretation of that event is also not really what happened.
Oh, man.
Number 3, teachers didn't know which essays used AI, but they could feel something was wrong. It's like, well, did they know or did they not? Well, it continues.
Is that buried in the 200 pages somewhere? Yeah. It's not really relevant to the conclusion.
This is interpretation. I'm not ascribing this to the original authors. This is just what happens with the world we're in. So I didn't finish. So the next sentence, soulless. That's the only word.
Soulless?
Yes. Next sentence, empty with regard to content. Close to perfect language while failing to give personal insights, the human brain can detect cognitive debt even when it can't name it. So that has all sorts of claims, most of which I think are ridiculous and obviously, written for dramatic effect.
Yes.
This also is that part of that broader trend where AIs can't do the thing and only humans can do it, which we know I'm not sympathetic to. It is true in some cases at the moment, but I kind of give it time. Yeah. And you can also make it so the AI is like, why don't you just do a worse job like a human would? Like, okay, here you go. And now it sounds more like
there's a certain style that AI has that is a little maybe recognizable, a little different, but it's kind of subjective. Some people might actually find it sounds more profound. You could just tell it sound profound.
Well, that's what I mean, right?
Sound poetic.
Sound more soulful.
Yeah,
Make a few more errors.
Be appealing to someone who has an eat, pray, love sign in their house,
What about a live, laugh, love?
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of, not the movie with Julia Roberts.
live, laugh, eat. Eat, pray, laugh. I also wanted to share this comment by Giuseppe Saturna on Ethan Mollick's post, where he was complimentary and I thought it was worth sharing. Finally, a critical reading that goes beyond the AI rots your brain headline. This MIT study is methodologically broken. The key issue, no initial skills profiling. Without a baseline, we're not seeing causation, but just correlation.
Yeah.
Paradoxically, the data may suggest the opposite of the atrophy narrative. It's likely that the, probably, weaker writers in the LLM group were scaffolded by AI to produce stronger essays. When AI was removed, their actual unsupported level emerged. Not damage, just exposure. With 18 participants, just 9 per group, minor differences skew results.
Yeah.
Even assuming balanced groups, the study leads to a sequence paradox. AI only harms if it's used first. That's a weak premise.
Yeah.
Real learning isn't linear, and prior exposure to AI wasn't controlled. The most fascinating part, however, is the viral, uncritical reception of this study. It has become a meta-study in itself, revealing our own powerful biases. First, authority bias is from MIT. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention that. It's from the MIT Media Lab and several other people, like 8 of them in there. And confirmation bias. It confirms the fear that AI is making us dumber. Future studies need proper skills profiling and prior AI exposure controls. The real challenge isn't AI versus brain, but teaching people how to use the tools as amplifiers, not crutches.
I question the confirmation bias comment. I did not have a prior belief that AI made people dumber before hearing this segment. Maybe that is a belief that people have, but AI is a lot of things, but that was never a thought I had.
So in my experience, and this is like, we're all getting a different slice of reality,
Yeah, of course.
right? And there is something about echo chambers and we know it's not quite true. And there's also something about bubbles, but it's also not quite true. In my experience, there is a lot of attention to studies that say AI isn't that good.
Okay.
Or AI is bad.
Yeah, sure.
And those studies seem to circulate more,
yeah.
especially among the general population, more than the AI just did this amazing thing.
So it's a bias people have to share negative things about something they're maybe a bit concerned about.
Of course. Now, it could also be that, yes, the world is complex and amorphous, and there's both subgroups, subdemographics there where some people are to confirmation bias linked to AI is good versus AI is bad and these sorts of things. But other people said like, oh, these studies seem to get a lot of attention. Even when Apple put out this thing like, oh, AIs can't really reason. And then the correction like, well, okay, they can just do tons of stuff that's like reasoning, fine.
Yeah.
Or you constrained it, or it was also methodologically flawed. So there's all these ways in which AI is getting better. And that seems like there's very strong incentives people have to believe that it's not.
Yeah.
It certainly would be nice because then they don't have to worry about losing their job or other issues, as we know I'm concerned about. See my book, Uncontrollable, available on Amazon. So I just really think that it's hard to know if it's actually a true fact that this is generating that confirmation bias type thing. But in my experience, it is.
Okay, here's another perspective on the question.
Yeah.
Which may be a bit silly. Who cares if LLMs are making humans dumber as long as the LLMs are getting smarter? Because humans thinking is like a thing of the past.
Well, yeah, some people do think that way. And some of those people are the ones building the AI that might take over. So,
Fair.
You raised a good point, though. I wanted to also include, before I fully wrap up here, that there is some evidence that the more you use an AI in certain ways, you may actually reduce your cognitive capabilities, as you kind of said before.
Sure.
Use it or lose it. And you can also imagine, depending on when one sort of intersects with this AI system in their life, like say as a child, it could be highly beneficial or detrimental or both.
Well, this is kind of like the idea of like once you learn to read and write, all of a sudden your memory gets worse because you can write things down. Now, I think there may be other issues going on that it's like you happen to hit a certain age and things change, but there's a lot of tools which we use, which we offload things to, and then we don't actually need to do the other thing. I don't need to memorize phone numbers because I have it in my phone. Is that bad? Is memorizing a phone number a good on its own, or is that just...
Well, I don't think so. I have memories of phone numbers from my youth, but I don't know anyone's phone number now. I don't know Adam's phone number.
I only know old phone numbers. Yeah.
My phone knows the phone numbers.
Yeah.
That's what it's for. I think the analogy, which might be more applicable, which I did mention in my book, is the calculator. So we give children calculators and we expect people to use calculators, but we don't give them right away. So kids need to learn how to do math. Otherwise, they will not know how to do math. Yeah. Similarly, with the LLMs, the idea of like just thinking critically, understanding things is very important. And this is obviously a hot topic in academia, like when and how to use AI systems, at what grade, in what capacity.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because if you, again, a student who was honest, like, well, I have the answer machine beside me.
Of course.
You want me to think for myself?
Yes, because thinking is valuable on its own in a learning sense,
and
obviously.
And so if you're older, you've probably thought a lot already. Yeah. And now you can use AI and then critically evaluate the content. Yeah. But there's also a world where you could imagine if you always just use the AI, you're like, oh, I'm losing some of my skills.
Well, I see that take that's like, you don't need to do this thing without AI because you'll have AI. I think that's a bit of a silly take. Oh, you mean like there is value to doing math without having a calculator. It's kind of embarrassing when someone can't add like two simple numbers.
Right.
And maybe I'm an outlier, but like, if I have a math problem, I'll challenge myself to do it in my brain and check it in the calculator rather than do it in the calculator. But that's probably not everybody, right?
Adam and I are delightful nerds that way. let me try to calculate the tax using my mind. But I think it's not so much. Let's put a point on it. It's not necessarily embarrassing, but for some people it would be. Some people don't care. Yeah. It's more that they're losing out on what I believe is a critical faculty to understand the world. Now, do that many people need math all the time? Not all the time, but frequently. And they can easily be taken advantage of if they don't know math. And
Yes.
This is how a lot of advertising works,
Yes.
or many other things. Like, what are the odds of this? What are the odds of that? Like how much things weigh, and basic facts about the universe. You can't really understand a lot of interesting scientific things without numbers. But more practically, if you try to navigate through the world without knowing math, you'll be at a huge disadvantage compared to people who do.
Absolutely. Yes, you have a calculator in your pocket at all times, but being able to quickly do that math and make those estimates and whatever is hugely useful constantly in day-to-day life if you use math properly. So I often see these memes. It's like, oh, another day without using this whatever math. It'd be like, you don't navigate the world the same way I do, because I use this math all the time, right? Like it depends how you want to view problems.
Are you using trigonometry all the time?
So people say, oh, I went another day without using sine and cosine. Okay. Think about the world. Like the length of the day is, directly correlated with a sine wave. Just like there's a lot of things you can think of with that. But if you didn't learn it properly in school, you won't apply it. So it's complicated.
Yes.
Anyway, we're really off the topic
And
here.
we're just the sort of pro-math people here.
I'm pro-math.
Like, well, if you want to understand even how these LLMs work at all, which you can't really, to be fair, like it's on the backbone of math, right?
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
And ones and zeros, and that's how you seem to have magic in your pocket, in your phone, and on your computer. All I have to say is, using large language models may interfere with different aspects of cognitive development,
Sure.
but they really overreached when they said over 4 months, like almost everything got worse. You're like, well, not really. That makes it sound like these people were, enfeebled, right? They lost half their connectivity, their brain's falling apart, they can't clothe and feed themselves. Again, they didn't say that, but it really seems very dramatic versus, there could be lots of reasons, and maybe in this context, people were just fine.
Yeah, and what's your goal? If your goal is learning, use it appropriately. If your goal is getting the results that it will give you, use the tool as it best serves that goal.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, sometimes these headlines, these studies, they make me mental, Adam. Is that similar to mentalism?
It absolutely is, Darren.
Excellent.
If it helps me convince you about my trick.
Excellent. Well, wait, it's not a trick, though. It's real.
Depends on the mentalist. It depends how they sell it or how they bundle it. Mentalism seems to be a hot topic right now. A friend of mine texted me a couple of weeks ago asking me to look into a mentalist named Oz Pearlman, who was on a recent episode of the Joe Rogan podcast. So I decided to check out the episode to see what the fuss was about, so shout out to my buddy Chris for the great topic suggestion. Now, I'm not an expert on mentalism, but I had a certain perspective when listening to the show, and I thought that might be useful to give a bit of an overview on mentalism, what it is, and things like that.
Looking forward to it.
I was fairly sure that we talked about the TV series The Mentalist on the podcast during our first year. I couldn't find the episode, so it might have just been an aside talking about something else. The show premiered a bit over a month after we started the podcast, so this might even have been before Darren was on the show.
That's true. Podcast came out in the summer 2008. I came in October 2008.
Mm-hmm. And The Mentalist was a September or a fall 2008 show. So in this case, Oz Pearlman went on Joe Rogan. One viral clip was him guessing his banking PIN. I saw that before I saw the episode. People were kind of like, oh, Joe seems really pissed off. He did, but I think it was fine. So it's kind of surprised some people. It kind of seemed impossible. Like, how did he do that? But Oz insists it's a trick. Of course it's a trick, right? He does not pretend to be some sort of magic telepathic person, but he just doesn't tell you what the trick is.
Okay, so he's not going for the medium. He is the mentalist.
Yep. He freely admits that it's a trick, but he's still misdirecting because that's still what they do. So an explanation on mentalism, it's sort of like magic, only instead of focusing on doing a physical thing, they're tricks of the mind, or something meant to look like a trick of the mind. So rather than a card trick, the mentalist will do something like, for example, appear to be psychic, or guess something about you, guess a word, guess a number, something like that. There are different kinds of mentalism. So some so-called psychics will use mentalism to pretend to have actual supernatural powers, right? Many of them don't do this. Many of them will quite openly admit that they aren't doing anything special or magical, but instead they're saying that they're using a trick to make it look like they're reading your mind. So this is on its surface essentially true. Mentalists aren't psychic. There is a trick. But in dressing up the trick, they usually deceive people into thinking the trick is a different kind of trick. Okay, so this is basic misdirection similar to what's done in magic. So in a magic trick, you'll often have the performer trying to have your eye and attention focus on one thing while they're doing something else that's sort of unseen or rather unnoticed. So mentalism focuses your attention elsewhere. This isn't a visual attention, but in the same way, you're distracted and you're thinking about a different thing. For example, A lot of mentalists will pretend to read body language. They'll talk about things like NLP, that's neuro-linguistic programming, which is something we talked about on the show before.
As a quick note, you'll notice earlier I said natural language processing.
Yes.
So yes, there are 2 NLPs. One of them relates to machine learning, and the other one relates to this, probably not that reputable thing, but we'll let Adam tell us what it is.
Absolutely. And when you said NLP, it just kind of cued on me where you have 2 topics talking about NLP. So it's basically a tool. People use it to say things like, oh, I can tell if people are lying, and things like that. It's dubious. It seems to be possible because it doesn't violate some stuff like the laws of physics, like being psychic would. A mentalist can claim to do this, and it sounds like that is their trick. And it sounds like they're being sort of straight. But they're not doing that. That is absolutely not what they're doing. That is a distraction, okay? So your mind is focused on trying to tell how well their ability to read subtle cues, body language, and things like that are. And meanwhile, you're not looking for what the actual trick is, which is something completely different, probably less compelling.
Yeah, it's almost like close to being a magician in various ways, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot of crossover or similarities between these 2 groups of people. So I've had 2 mentalism experiences in my life, which I'm just going to touch on. So the first one year at the Amazing Meeting, it's a skeptic convention, which used to be held in Las Vegas. I went to a mentalist show with John Abrams. So this was about 15 or so years ago. So I don't recall all the specifics, but basically we were in a mostly empty auditorium where the show was going to take place in a few hours. I think it was just after another performance. We just happened to be sitting around chatting. The performer who was going to be doing the upcoming mentalist show, I don't recall his name, and this is probably best because I'm going to kind of call him out. He came by and he asked, hey, are you guys planning to come to my show later? Well, we did. So we asked if we could help him out. He asked us to sit in a certain spot in the audience. He said he would randomly call me out, and then he would pretend we've never met before. He would have me lie and say that we hadn't.
Deception.
Yeah, and then I don't remember the specifics, but basically he was gonna guess a thing about me or a number I had or whatever it was. And then I was supposed to act surprised and the audience was supposed to be surprised. So in this case, the trick is it's just a lie. Well, it's always a lie because the trick is always a lie, but it's just like that's a very simple, unsophisticated trick.
Yeah.
It's just like you just get the guy in on it. And people think like, well, I guess the guy could be in on it, but like it's probably not that, you know?
Probably not. I also like the idea that you would just then like ruin his trick.
Oh, you could. So it's dangerous.
Yeah.
There's a risk there.
Actually, it was 7.
But there's pressure. There's like social pressure. There's a lot of pressure for me not to ruin. Yeah. I don't want to ruin this guy's trick. You know, I want to be nice.
Imagine
and this guy's
like, when you approached me earlier and we agreed on this, like, oh,
he'd probably lie. He may have a canned response for that, but true. Yeah, part of his role in being a successful mentalist is being charismatic enough for me to go along with that.
Fair.
And
yes,
to be able to gauge my reaction and think if I'm being honest about doing it, right? Not even with NLP, but just like being good with people.
Yes.
So long story short, I don't remember the specifics. I think our dinner took longer and we got back and I sat close to there, but I didn't sit in the exact spot he'd said. So I wasn't sure if he saw me and I tried to kind of make myself very visible. And when the time came to select a random audience member, he selected someone else. But he asked that person the exact same questions he had planned on asking me. That person was obviously a plant as well. Mm-hmm. The person claimed not to be a plant, and it played out in the exact same way. So
it would make sense for him to have backups.
Absolutely. He should have more than one person, because if I'm not there, he can't do his trick at all, right?
Yep.
So the other one was a trick that the amazing James Randi, did on me after the interview we did.
Mm.
Now, again, I don't remember all the specifics, but it was similar to a trick that Oz did on the Flagrant podcast, and I'll talk about that appearance later. So James Randi basically said, get a random book. I went over to a table that was selling skeptic-related books. I asked if I could borrow one. I picked up a random book. It's not a trick book or anything. He couldn't have memorized it, I think. So he made me skip to a random page. I can't remember if I skipped it or he skipped it or whatever it was, and pick a random word. This was a long time ago. And then he wrote some letters down on a piece of paper, and it looked like gibberish. And he said, oh, sorry, I got this wrong. And he turns the paper upside down, and the letters like sort of looked like other letters, and it was like the words that were on the page.
Yeah.
So 16 years, I have no idea. I have no idea how he did it, and I didn't think to look it up afterwards. I didn't really want to.
Yeah. Fair.
And it was impressive. So I bought the book, The Science Under Siege. I have this book here. It's a real book, and I still have it. And I still have the piece of paper that James Randi wrote that note on. So that was kind of cool.
Yep.
And I know it's a trick, but I don't know what that trick is. Okay, so I looked up the Wikipedia page for book test, which is kind of what they randomly call this subset of type of tricks, and includes the following passage, and I quote, James Randi uses the trick as a staple of his impromptu shows, selecting among a wide variety of methods at whim. So that doesn't even narrow it down which one it is, because he probably had like 11 different versions that he knows how to do.
Right, of course.
Depending on the situation. It's like maybe he's got a book, maybe he doesn't, maybe it's a random book.
At least it doesn't say he also always picks the most gullible looking person.
Yeah, I wonder if he picked me because I seemed more, I don't know. But there was other people
friendly?
there, right? So they could have been watching him. So that kind of changes it, right?
Adam seems friendly, by the way. I don't know if you guys know that who are listening.
Seem friendly.
Well, is friendly, but he also seems friendly.
So I wanted to do just an explanation of one variant of the book test, but instead, Darren, I want you to pick a random book off your shelf.
Oh, all right. Well, I mean, I'm not going to pick my book because that's too problematic, I think. But yes, I picked a book.
So I got a book here. Artificial Intelligence and Illustration. Was there going to be pictures in this book?
There are. Do you want a non-picture book?
No, that's
But you're going to have to say the title again, though.
Artificial Intelligence in Illustrated History by Clifford A. Pickover. Let's make this a little more random. Can you pick a second book off of your shelf?
Hey man, in case you're wondering, people, it's sort of what's within reach.
Okay, so this is Ray Kurzweil, New York Times bestselling author. The singularity is nearer when we merge with AI. Okay,
which we didn't really like that much.
Is there another book that you're interested in on the shelf, or is
are you just stealing all my books, bro?
Is two enough?
I mean, you want to pick my book?
No, two's good. Two's good.
Okay.
Out of these books, do you get like certain vibes out of one of them?
What kind of vibes?
I'm like bad vibes, maybe, or
bad vibes. Well, I did like this one more, so I guess I have bad vibes more so from the Kurzweil.
Okay, so we'll take the Kurzweil book out.
Okay.
So we randomly kind of selected this artificial intelligence. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to close my eyes. Mm-hmm. I'm going to flip through the pages. I want you to tell me when to stop.
Okay.
Okay, so that's going to be like a random page. I'm not even going to see it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stop.
Okay, good. So,
okay.
I'm not going to look at the page. I don't want to look at the page. I don't even want to see it. I'm just going to show this to you.
Okay.
So I want you to look at the page on, so I guess that's your right.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, that's good.
And what do I do now?
I don't know, focus on like, what's the main kind of word? Is there a...
Yes.
I'm thinking something like checkers?
It is.
Checkers on the page?
Yes.
There you go. It's because of reality check. Checkers. That's what Christina always used to say, right? Hey, checkers.
Wow.
There you go. So there, I just did a trick on Darren. Darren, do you know what I did?
Well, for those at home who couldn't see what I see, when I said stop, Adam kept going. Quite dramatically so. And so
that's fair.
I was like, I think he already had that page marked.
Okay, that's
my guess.
That is true. Okay, I'll explain the trick just because this is just one version.
Sure.
So one aspect of this is they call it, I think it's called pushing. So I push the book.
Yeah.
So I make it look like it's your choice, but it's not.
Right.
So in this case, we picked two books. While you were looking for your second book, I looked in the book. Okay, so I'd never seen this book before in my life.
True.
You turned around, I looked at a page, I saw checkers was like in a title, and I just I took one of these cards and I put it in the book.
Audience,
okay?
I did have my back turned for a split second. Mm-hmm. Adam is sneaky.
So there you go.
I thought he was friendly too.
And then I pretended that bad vibes thing. Yep. I could have said, well, you said, oh, this one gives me bad vibes. I'd be like, great, let's do the one with bad vibes, right? That was a fake choice.
So that I saw it coming because I thought, okay, this is the false sense. It's going to be whatever you want and you can go one way or the other.
Yeah, so if I was a better showman, I could have probably dressed that up better so that you would have not suspected it. I've never done this trick before. No, I came up with it yesterday.
It's a good first move.
Okay, yeah. and then so I flipped through and there was a card in it, so I just stopped where the cart was. So you're right. I totally faked how many pages I flipped. But variants on this can have like you would flip through and stop on a page. So I don't know how they would do that. I have to look up other versions. So there's a lot of other versions of this kind of trick. But so much to say like so now that I've explained it, the trick is actually really basic. Right?
It's very, very
like it's not that interesting at all. But when you don't know, you're like, I have no idea how that works, right? Yes. And I kind of chose a basic version.
Yeah, so there could be a world where there could be a version, just thinking off the cuff here, where you somehow quickly mark like two different pages.
Yep.
And then each one could be closer to when the person says stop. right? Because
Oh,
the
yeah,
issue
yeah.
here is that
Yep.
I said stop about halfway through, and it so happened Adam chose one that was near the back.
So
it's more obvious.
Yeah, so I'm not good at flipping through a book. Plus, it's hardcover, which made it harder.
Yeah,
if
that's
it was
true.
softcover, I
That's
could have
true.
sort of bent it more, and it would have been easier.
True. Yep.
So if I was better, what I probably could have done is like put it like 3/4 of the way through, flip through the first half very quickly, knowing you wouldn't say stop right away, and then slowly slowing down so that like.
You're right.
You know,
That's a good,
but I'm not skilled at it. I'm not a magician.
That's
right?
an excellent point that I hadn't realized that almost everyone is going to say stop within like not the first 1 second,
Sure.
and not 10 seconds later.
Yeah.
Like oh wait, 20
It'll be
seconds.
like 3 to 5 seconds.
No, the last page of the book. No. So I mean, like, if you're trying to like hurt the guy making a trick, then you would do that. But yeah, you're right. It's probably 3 to 5 seconds, and then you could control the rate of flip.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And this is part of why they won't do the same. They won't do the same trick a bunch of times because then I'd be like, oh, I just saw this trick. This time I'll say stop right away, and it's totally gonna mess them up. So a lot of times they'll be like, oh, do it again on me. Like this was, so Oz did. I watched a couple of podcasts on Flagrant, is on Joe Rogan, and he'd often say like, oh, do the same trick on Jamie. Oh, do the same trick on me. And he'd be like, no, I don't want it. No, I'm bored with this trick. So that's a lie for sure. That's a lie. I'm bored with this trick. Let's do something else, right? And then he'd do another canned trick that he knows that he can present and do.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly. This is probably different than the version that he did on the Flagrant podcast. It doesn't explain the various tricks that Oz did on Joe Rogan's podcast either. For the pin trick that he did on Joe Rogan, he made the audience think that he was doing something statistical about the odds, right? So he'd have Joe Rogan write down a number. He'd say like, oh, because you're a guy, you probably went down from the number you're really thinking of. Well, if he knew his number was actually the other direction, he'd just say going up. Like, so that's total fabrication, but he's making the audience think, oh, he's going with statistics. He's going with likelihoods and things like that. So he did a lot of those kind of things, talking about trends, how people anticipate things like that. So I actually don't know what he did for the pin. I don't have an explanation. Some people probably have ideas, but he probably developed that trick over a long amount of time. It's silly. It could be something as simple as Joe Rogan was in on it, and he didn't really guess his pin. Well, that's true. He just lied. I'm not saying that's an explanation, but like it's a mundane explanation. There may be a similarly mundane explanation.
There's a world where Joe Rogan has to immediately go change his pin before the show airs.
Well, I think that was it. Like he seemed uncomfortable because he was like, do I have to go change my pin now, right? Yeah. So this guy's probably not going to go off and do a Terminator 2 and empty his bank account with a few machine, but I don't know.
Yes, the most significant part of Terminator 2 was using the pin to steal the money.
Easy money. It's I like when the only good part of Terminator Salvation is when they reference that scene with the motorcycle.
Easy money.
So there are other things that he did in that show. So Joe Rogan has his assistant Jamie. He does a lot of his tech stuff. And basically, Oz guessed Jamie's first crush. So he could correctly guess that it was Christine Taylor from a TV show called Hey Dude. I didn't watch Hey Dude, but she's in like the Brady Bunch movies and Zoolander. So I don't know how he did it, but I can imagine some mundane explanations, right? So maybe Jamie posted about that online somewhere and Oz found it. So, I did some basic research. I went to like search Jamie's like Twitter profile to see if he ever mentioned Christine Taylor. I didn't see it, but it's very possible that it was something that basic. But then when he's guessing names, Oz focuses on like, common letters and what were common girl names around the time that you were young and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I don't know what the trick is, but I'm fairly certain that it wasn't that. That is misdirection. That's him making us think of another thing. So I'm focusing on that. I'm not thinking about what he's really doing.
Right. Which is fair. I mean, as you said, like, because we're science people, there has to be some way he's doing it that is not actual supernatural magic.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, knowing that one thing isn't what it is, it doesn't help us much because now it's like the rest of the world of possibilities.
Of course.
That remains. And that's very vague. So at the end of the episode, he guesses that a person that Joe Rogan would have loved to meet basically and have on his show was Muhammad Ali, and he had a photo inside a sealed envelope. So I don't know the details, but a hint might be that he makes Rogan change his answer. So he gives another answer. And he's like, "Oh, what was the one you thought of before that you didn't want to give?" And then it ends up being Muhammad Ali. So it may be something as simple as Joe having had mentioned it previously, and he just like knew it.
It's also like an obvious choice.
Yeah.
Because like Joe's interviewed tons and tons of people, not obvious people that are dead.
Yeah.
Muhammad Ali is like one of the most famous people he would want to. So like Muhammad Ali. Would he want to do Bruce Lee? And then maybe like JFK, I think, just off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, it's definitely someone he's mentioned before, but it's still specific and it's a big risk if he doesn't know where he's going to go, and people can change their minds. True. So there may be other factors and I don't know what they are. And on the Flagrant podcast, there was one book trick, which may not be one that I explained. And he did this weird one where he had two people state their favorite drinks, and then he used the letter of those favorite drinks to spell the name of the podcast. So one person had Fanta and one person had Lager, and it spelled flagrant by like moving the letters around.
Like an anagram.
Yeah, and then he pulls out like a beer that has like a Fanta flavor. So it's like there's no way he did that on the fly, but I don't know. It was so that I have no explanation for it, but it's if you knew what it was, it's probably like, oh, that's kind of.
So basically, you're telling us about mentalism tricks we don't know.
Well, I don't know. I could. I think my buddy Chris wanted me to go through and like figure out what all the tricks are, but sorry, I can't do that.
Well, but there is also something, as you said, like kind of ruining it. When you had the James Randi thing, you kind of just wanted that.
Oh yeah, it was a great experience.
Like even though like this is clearly artificial, Adams demonstrated this thing. It was kind of fun to go along with the book thing.
Yeah.
It's like oh, we're in like a little play scenario. It's kind of fun, and I know you don't have magic powers.
Yes.
And I get to try to figure it out, but it's also like, oh look, I have magic.
Yeah. And if I was better at it, I could have gone along with that better too. So then Oz is asked like, why doesn't he do interrogations like for the police? And then he always gives excuses. He'll say like, oh well, no, it'd be too boring. I wouldn't want to do that. Well, no, that's not really the issue. The issue is that he's not really reading people because that's the cover, right? There's another trick,
right?
So he can't go do interrogations and find out the real answer. But people do use tricks in interrogations all the time. They're called false confessions. They're extremely unethical. They use them to get what seems like the truth, and it's not necessarily true.
I mean, they also use enhanced interrogation techniques. Things
so
which are also not so reliable.
They use sort of social intimidation and stuff like that. So for him to work for a police department to get the answer that he wants to get out of someone would be extremely unethical.
Or like he goes so far that he knows someone and he has them commit a crime, and then he comes in and then he does read them, and you're like, dude, just let it go.
He's like, we've never met before, right? Because this guy knows that if he admits it, he'll go to jail.
It's like, you're my brother. Oh. A strange brother.
So the TV series The Mentalist was kind of all about this, right? So the main character was previously like a scam psychic guy, and then he kind of turned straight because a serial killer killed his wife and uses his powers for good to help solve crimes. But the things in the show aren't actually things that mentalists do. So he would do things like he would read people's body language and use NLP and things like that to solve crimes.
Oh, I see.
But that's the cover. So that's not what mentalists really do.
He was using the misdirect.
Yeah. So it's kind of an anyway. I watched a couple seasons. It was fun. It was cool, and it was kind of more Sherlock Holmesy, right? Like Sherlock Holmes has these like really good
powers of deduction.
Powers of deduction, exactly. So a lot of shows will have like they'll have a robot or an alien and be like, oh, I can read this guy's heartbeat, so I can tell he's lying and things like that, right?
Or
that's not how mentalists really work.
Hear it.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if you really had super special powers, you might be able to watch like different physiological events occur that a normal human would have no way of knowing.
Maybe, but like just like a lie detector test or polygraph isn't totally reliable because you can tell someone's nervous, but you can't necessarily tell what they're nervous because of. You can't necessarily correlate it with the truth or a lie.
Right.
Those correlations may have statistical value, but for you to individually tell like if something is true in the case of like a murder investigation, it's not really reliable.
Well, if I was suddenly in a room with someone who could just read my heartbeat from across the room, I'd be like, my heartbeat's going right up. Right? Exactly. Your galvanic skin response has increased. Like, yeah.
Or I'm in the room with a psychic. The first thing I'm going to think is the worst thing in the world. It's the worst possible thing. And I'll be like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. They'd be like, it happens to me every single time I meet a human.
That's so funny. I thought you were going to do it like because it's you. just
because I think of horrible people.
No, just to play with them. I was like, oh, well, I'll put this in your mind. Ha.
Yeah. Like, there you go, bro.
Yeah.
I'll be like, oh, I hate people like you.
Sorry, I was taking it as far afield.
Sure. So Oz accurately explains that the real skill is the showmanship. So it's not about adhering to the trick, but it's about dressing it up well, teasing it, pulling in the subject and the audience and delivering it. He doesn't repeat the trick more than once because it gives the opportunity for people to try to figure out how it works and notice patterns. Instead, he says it's boring. He'll move on. He'll do another trick. Now, not every mentalist uses the same explanation on how their mentalism really works. If one claims to be an actual psychic, we may not think of them as a mentalist, even if they're using basically the same tricks. One may claim to be a medium, a spiritualist, talking to the dead. This may often rely on something like cold reading, but something like mentalism may be done to hook the subject in, to believe that they have a true gift, and then once they're in, then they use something like cold reading to just give them basic, kind of boring answers. I would have liked to have given an explanation for every trick that Oz does. I don't actually know. I don't think that's strictly necessary to understand the basic concept of mentalism and how it works. It's enough to just know it's a trick. Mentalists aren't doing anything supernatural, and the good ones don't claim to, but they do claim to be doing something that's almost certainly not the actual trick. Knowing that probably won't help you narrow it down much. You'll just have to learn the tricks of the trade and find other variants of the various tricks they do. Or don't, because sometimes it's actually a lot more fun to just go along with the show.
Well said. Yes. I think it's a good note where one part of the trick is a subset of a trick, which is that, okay, I know this is a trick, and then for some reason you believe that they're doing, as you said, like the body language, cold reading and whatnot. When like, well, why wouldn't that be a trick too? So like, I'll think critically, but not consistently critically.
Yeah. Sometimes it's nice not to think critically, but you have to kind of accept that you want to kind of understand that's what you're doing.
Of course.
You know?
Of course. Yeah. You want to be a willing participant.
Yep. Absolutely. Before we wrap up the show, I wanted to give a shout out to listener Craig, who gave us a very generous donation on Patreon. While we're happy to do the show for free, if you're interested in donating, please check out our website, trcpodcast.com.
Well, thanks, Adam. And thanks for joining us once again, listeners. I talked about a study that said ChatGPT kind of makes your brain bad, and that's not quite true. There's maybe some decent research which could be refined and built upon, but nowhere near deserving of the headlines interpretations that people gave it. And Adam talked to us about mentalism, a legitimate real thing that is not supernatural, but seems to approximate some special powers if you're not thinking critically enough. Until next time, think better, act better.
Peace out, cuboids.
For show notes or to discuss this episode, visit our Facebook page and website at trcpodcast.com. For general inquiries or to send a topic or parody suggestion, email info@trcpodcast.com. Help support the show by leaving a review on iTunes and liking us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at TRC_podcast.
Outtakes.
My apologies. It's one of those like, we'll get it on episode 800.
Episode 1424.
Yep. How's the first name written?
Oz, O-Z, but he pronounced it Oz, so I wrote O-W-E-S. Every time I put in my notes so I would pronounce it properly.
Okay. I was like, who calls himself Oz?
It's O-Z like Oz. I'm like, this is so weird, but no, they kept saying Oz, and I'm like, okay, it's Oz. Did you notice the card fall out of the book when I flipped to the page?
I didn't.
Okay. I was gonna like write the word down, but you picked the second book far too quickly.